Good morning. In this day and age of divorces and children being born with the parents not being married, child support has become a very important topic, not only in family law, but just in life in general, especially in how we raise families here in the United States. Today, I'll be talking about some basics regarding child support. Welcome to another edition of Coffee with Law. My name is Benjamin Sanchez, and I'm an attorney in Houston. I represent people, including consumers, tenants, and homeowners, in everyday life setbacks to help them move forward. Today, I want to discuss a little bit about child support and some of the basics that you may want to know when thinking about this issue and potentially hiring an attorney or discussing child support with the other parent. Now, first of all, child support in Texas is based upon net income. Okay, we're talking about, net resources. Let me be proper with the term net resources. Now, net resources is defined in the family code. In the Texas Family Code, we do have mandatory deductions in order to determine that net resource. So if you were to take your overall paycheck or other income, and then you take away your Social Security taxes, your federal income tax, and specifically federal income tax based on the tax rate for a single person claiming one personal exemption and the standard deduction. In Texas, we don't have state income tax, but if you did, you could do that. So you could potentially be employed by an employer in another state and have state income tax taken out, or you live in another state where state income tax is there, so that's taken out. Union dues and expenses for health insurance coverage for the child that's subject to the child support. Now, that's how you basically calculate net resources. In Texas, the family attorneys who are part of the State Bar of Texas, we get this little handy guide that helps us so that we don't have to remember all of the numbers. And in fact, I want to show it to you because hopefully your attorney has one of these. It's called the State Bar of Texas Toolkit. It comes out every year for the members of the State Bar of Texas Family Law section. So unfortunately, we have to look at tables like this sometimes to figure out where you fall. And you can't really see it too much, but we have income, we have tax, Social Security, Medicare, federal income tax, net income, and we determine sort of net income in these charts based upon certain amounts that you make per month. Now, once you get those net resources, then there are guidelines about the percentage that one can take out for child support. And this is what is commonly referred to as guideline child support. It's going to be important because in family law, you hear that term guideline a lot. You have a standard possession order and you have guideline support. So in Texas Family Code, we base guideline support on the number of children involved. But it goes more to that. It's not just about the child who's subject of that particular child support action. So, for example, you may have other children that are also subject to a child support action. And so, therefore, the court has to consider everything, because if the court would only consider that one child or children before the court and not consider other support obligations, then potentially that person paying the support would not have any money left over. So what we do in Texas is we figure out how many children are before the court for that particular child support action. And then we also figure out the number of children that the obligor, the person paying the support, has a duty to support. And that is different than a child basically living at home with that person. So you can't go have one or two babies with one person and then go have 6 babies with your second wife or whatever, and say, well, I've got a duty to support 8. It's not really, it doesn't really work that way. We know that you're going to support, hopefully, the children in your home, but there may be other obligations. So some people may have 3 different children by 2 or 3 different women, and we have to calculate those. And if they're not living with him, then we have to calculate those different child support amounts for that purpose. So those percentages are, again, have another chart. So there's a chart here, and we have a graph, and we figure out how many children. So for example, and I'll just give you some examples. If you have 1 child before the court, but no other children, then your guideline support is at 20%. Okay? If you have 2 children with no other children that you need to support before the court, then that's 25%. 3 is 30%. Now, however, that 20% that you would have paid for the child that was before the court, if there were no other children, that goes down to 17.5% if there is another child that you have a duty to support in addition to the one before the court. And it just sort of goes down from there. So we sort of plug and play the different numbers based upon the net resources to come to the guideline percentage, and then we calculate that. So basically, on a monthly obligation, we take the monthly net resources times the percentage from the table, and that comes out to the monthly obligation. And then we also do that for weekly, twice a month, biweekly calculations as well. Now, I do want to say, in addition, however, the law does allow the courts to vary from the child support guidelines. And there's a whole host of factors. This is found in the Texas Family Code. And part of the code basically says this, that the court may order periodic child support payments in an amount other than that established by the guidelines if the evidence rebuts the presumption that application of the guidelines is in the best interest of the child and justifies a variance from the guidelines. So again, the Texas Family Code is clear that if it's in the best interest of the children and there's a justification for variance, then the child support payments can be in an amount other than your normal guideline support. It further goes on to say that in determining whether application of the guidelines would be unjust or inappropriate under the circumstances, the court shall consider evidence of all relevant factors, including, and then there are 17 different factors under the law here. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them, but some of them, for example, are the age and needs of the child, the ability of the parents to contribute to support of the child, any financial resources available for the support of the child, the amount of time and possession of and access to a child, and so on and so forth. So there are 17 different factors that could potentially justify a variance from the child support guidelines. Now, the courts have said in a couple cases, one, that needs of the child are not limited to the bare necessities of life, but is not determined by the parent's ability to pay or lifestyle of the family. Okay, so remember, there's a lot of moving parts here, but we're not talking about just the bare essential needs, but we're also not talking about just the ability to pay. So because someone potentially makes a lot of money doesn't mean that they should pay a higher percentage. Now, their overall child support may be higher, but just because there's a lot of money involved doesn't mean that the percentage may vary. Again, you have to get into those 17 factors. The cases have also held that expert testimony is not required to establish needs such as a private school or extracurricular activities. That means a parent can get up on the stand and talk about educational decisions, about extracurricular activities, and what those cost, and so on and so forth. So the court recognizes that we don't need to hire some sort of expert to tell us what parents go through in terms of their needs and desires for their kids to go to school or to have extracurricular activities. And then lastly, the courts have held that the list of factors and the guidelines are not exclusive. So, for example, IRS tax credits may be considered. There's a whole separate issue dealing with minimum wage. We'll get to that in another video. So I hope you understand some of these basics about child support. First of all, we have to figure out what the net resources are. And then we have a percentage based upon the number of children before the court and the number of children outside of the court that the person who's paying child support is obligated or has a duty to support. Again, not the children at home living with the obligor, but other children in which there's a payment or a duty to support outside of the home. So we look at those factors, and then we see whether or not there should be any variance from that guideline support. So again, we figure out the net resources, we come to the guideline support, and then we figure out if there should be any variance from that guideline support based upon those 17 factors that we talked about or that are in the law. I hope this has been helpful. And when you go see the child support review officer at the Attorney General's office, or you go see an attorney about potentially hiring someone to deal with the child support matter, or you even go before a judge, keep this in mind so that you have the understanding of how the system works and how the attorneys and the judge are thinking about child support. Hopefully this has been helpful. If it has, please like, follow, and share this video so that others may get the benefit. Again, my name is Benjamin Sanchez. Have a great day. Bye-bye.